Void primaries are now the best they have ever been, and it's not particularly close, with the exception of really good exotics like Graviton Lance and Manticore having really good base stats. If we're talking about just primaries, I think that Graviton is probably the best that there is, with Lemon Arc getting a glow up this season thanks to Bolt Charge, which is odd to say because it's Arc, but it works really well with the new Titan aspect, and it's actually kind of refreshing to see a weapon that normally is used primarily as an overload weapon or in certain void builds used as part of an Arc Titan build. I mean, I really didn't have that on my bingo card, and I doubt many people did, which is why it's refreshing. But what everyone did have on their bingo card was destabilizing rounds being fantastic. They got a huge buff with the cooldown going from about 4 seconds to 1.5 seconds. And nearly every gun in the game that can get destabilizing is pretty good now at this point because of that. Void weapons with destabilizing are so good that even some content creators like Dado are crafting Word of Crota for the first time and realizing how good it is. In the past, of course, it was pretty good, but now with stabilizing getting buffed, it is arguably the best it's ever been. You can pair destabilizing with the new perk from this season, which applies weaken, called Demoralize. You can also pair it up with one of the more well-known void perks that was really good before destabilizing was, and that's of course Repulsor Brace, although that has gotten a little bit of a nerf now because of how good destabilizing is. Destabilizing will actually kill stuff at a faster rate, and for Repulsor to proc, you have to get kills with your weapon, not volatile. So it's actually kind of nerfed by the buff to destabilizing, which is kind of upsetting, but that's why, if you're using Reckless Oracle, something like One for All or Paracausal Affinity would be a better choice. And for Word of Crota, Dragonfly, which might seem like overkill in lower level stuff, might actually be really good in high-end content. But the main reason I wanted to make this video is because I made a video a while back, I think it was around the time Final Shape came out, just asking for some love to primary void weapons, and for the most part, because we didn't have a lot of void hand cannons in the game at the time outside of the 180s, which we have so many. But now Word of Crota is probably the best hand cannon, at least the best void hand cannon in the game, with Ancient Gospel up there as well. But really what void weapons needed, not just more of void weapons, but the perks just needed to be better, and destabilizing is arguably one of the best perks in the game now. So while I will talk mostly about primaries and which ones you should go get, you can also put destabilizing on Choir of One, which is one of the best exotics in the game right now. It's a special weapon, but I like to think of it as a shotgun. Like, it does hit like a truck up close, but it's also a scout rifle. It's really, really good. And if it wasn't a special ammo weapon, I think it could be crowned the best primary in the game. But I think you can give it that anyways, just because if you use it correctly, maybe you have some ammo finders on or special ammo finisher on, you're just never gonna run out of ammo. And on top of that, you have so much kill power. Like, it's insane how good this weapon is. That being said though, if you don't want to worry about your special ammo economy, there are some really good primary choices now in the energy slot. Starting off with the auto rifle from Garden of Salvation, which, by the way, I'm not going to go in any particular order here. These are just some of the best weapons with destabilizing that you can get right now. Reckless Oracle comes from Garden of Salvation, and you should at least put destabilizing on it, obviously, but you could also put One for All, which is a super easy perk to proc. It's a 35% damage increase when you hit 3 separate targets. I really enjoy the fire rate of this rapid fire auto. It's super easy to use, and if you want to play it safe, you could use destabilizing Repulsor, although I would recommend One for All for a little bit better offense, just because killing stuff faster is what you want to do. Now, if you are doing something a solo flawless run, Repulsor is more so what I would recommend, just to be super safe, although you will notice that sometimes you won't get Repulsor to proc, which is why it's better to have more offense if you can, just for, you know, the sake of not dying. The other nice thing about the buff to destabilizing is that it does grant you access to volatile, which means I am free from the chains of perpetually using Gear Falcons on Hunter, because it was just a quick and easy way to go invis to get your volatile rounds. But now, with the constant proccing of destabilizing, you can rely on it a lot more than just simply using Gear Falcons, which is so nice. It really opens up build crafting to a whole other level, and you wouldn't really think it would matter. You could just throw on a destabilizing gun and use whatever you want, but it's kind of like having access to Radiant with Solar, be it on Prismatic, right, as well, that you can get Radiant with Facet of Dawn. But usually people use that to get access to anti-barrier rounds, but with this change again, you can just use whatever Void primary you have and slap on destabilizing and you're good to go. Goes without saying that Word of Crota also fits into this category. Dragonfly destabilizing is a really good roll. You're also going to get a ton of explosions with Cursed Thrall. So after defeating a target with a melee attack, final blows with this weapon cause targets to explode, which is cool. Now the explosions might be overkill in the easier content, but in harder stuff it might be better. And as we said earlier in this video, you want to go for more offense if you can, just like you go for explosive and one for all on Midnight Coup, because you get the damage buff from explosive as well as one for all. Here, the more damage or the more AoE with the explosions is a good thing for ad clear and whatnot. But if you are building into overshields, Repulsor destabilizing is also a really solid option. And yeah. Next one is Exalted Truth, which is from Trials of Osiris, a 140 hand cannon, which gets some really good perks now. Like you can get Withering Gaze, you can get Demoralize, Repulsor destabilizing, one for all. So many different perks that are just phenomenal. And Trials recently got a glow up, so loot is not only easier to get, but it also drops more often. So those two kind of go hand in hand, which is awesome, and you should definitely go and try to pick this up if you can. But that being said, there's another 140 we'll get to right now, which is of course Ancient Gospel, which also drops from Garden of Salvation, so you can do 2 birds, 1 stone, with Garden going to get Reckless and Ancient Gospel, which, by the way, if you haven't done Garden of Salvation, it is just littered with fantastic weapons. The bow can get kinetic tremors, which is such a cool thing, and I hope bows get their fun in the sun someday, because I mean, compared to a lot of this stuff, they're just not that usable. Which, by the way, there are some good perks on the bow from this episode that'll be coming out sometime in Act 2 or 3, I'm not sure which, but yeah. But you also have the Sniper Omniscient Eye from Garden, which is fantastic as well. The shotgun has some really good overall stats, and I'm personally a fan of Sacred Providence, but it's certainly not the best pulse rifle in the game. I just like the way it sounds. But without further ado, Ancient Gospel, right? Explosive destabilizing is really nice. Damage boost from explosive payload, as well as destabilizing. This thing, to me, it looks weird. The sound I actually enjoy. I know some people don't like the sound of this, but I think the frame of the gun, the way it looks when you're shooting it, it bothers me. I don't know what it is, but I do think other hand cannons look much smoother than this, like Exalted or Word of Crota. So I crafted this thing. I haven't really used it, but oddly enough, I use it more in PvP than I did in PvE. Maybe I'll give it a fair shake at some point, but to me, it's just not my favorite gun out there. Next one is the Mahi's HC4, which is a hand cannon that I've actually enjoyed using. I love the Omelon hand cannons. They sound cool, they look cool, and this one gets repulsor destabilizing as well. And I'm honestly a heavy burst hand cannon fan. I have one of the arc ones with rapid hit volt shot, the one from Trials, yesterday's question. Warden's Law is a fun hand cannon to use with Lucky Pants. 4th times Vorpal goes really, really hard. And yeah, I think this is a solid option. I haven't really used it that much. You might see future me using it in some gameplay here. But I do think it's a solid option if you don't want to go do Garden, or maybe you don't have access to Garden. Maybe you don't want to do Trials and you want to just farm world drops. Mahi's is the hand cannon for you. And everything else is good. Like, don't get me wrong, I think there are obvious winners here, like Reckless Oracle and Word of Crota, just because the origin traits are really good and the perks are really good. But, you know, aside from that, you can get Ross Argo, you can get the Rapaste from Comp, Recluse, which, you know, SMGs might not be the favorite right now, but Recluse is really solid. Grid Skipper gets destabilizing as well. There are so many guns that get destabilizing, and it's really amazing. Joxer's Longsword, you can add to that as well. So Void Supremacy is here, right? Void weapons are tangoing with the best of Arc and Strand and Solar, and honestly Solar weapons might need a glow up as well. Incandescent just feels lackluster now. Maybe it's just Solar in general that needs some help. That's a whole different question to answer with sandbox balancing as far as non-prismatic stuff goes. But Volt Shot is still pretty strong. There are plenty of Volt Shot weapons in the game now. And, you know, the best probably being ones like Indebted Kindness and Subjunctive. But now it feels like Void has something to bring to the table, whereas before it was really not much. Like Repulsor was your best chance. I know that the role to go for an Into the Light for Recluse was Repulsor Desperate Measures, but now you might see people going for Repulsor Destabilizing, which is great because, again, it finally has some use as opposed to you get Destabilizing and you instantly dismantle it. So yeah, thanks Bungie for doing this. I hope we see more stuff like this in the future, bringing old perks or perks that just aren't used into the fray as an option. And, you know, this isn't just viable, right? Destabilizing is arguably one of the best perks in the game now, and it's truly a Void user's wet dream, which is what I am for the most part. Yeah. Anyways, let me know what Void weapon you'll be using the most this episode and in the future. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and all that stuff. And I'll see you in the next one.